Well, corruption is driven by greed. So if you find that, and when I talk about greed, I mean even people who are well off also engage in corruption, because that's greed. They just want more and more and more. So when they see what they can get, what being a leader can bring them, that when you've got people who are wanting to come to the country to invest, and you then meet with them, and then you try to say, what can I get out of it if I give you this contract, if I give you this tender, and so on and so forth. If you try to amass wealth, it's the thing that I talked about resisting temptation, because who doesn't want to be well off? But the thing is, how do you get there? And do you get there by doing things which are unlawful and illegal and engage in corruption just for your own benefit? And corruption is another form of self-interest. When I talked about power, being people wanting to stay in power out of self-interest, greed is also something that drives self-interest.
Today, with a special guest, the former president of the Republic of Botswana, His Excellency Lieutenant General Dr. Khama. Let me take this time to welcome you, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right. I want us to talk about something that you always talk about, you know, when it comes to criticizing leaders, world leaders who go against the Constitution and people's rights. You know, you are known for that. So you commented on the events that are unfolding in Zimbabwe, whereby we see the current president and his administration, you know, amending the Constitution so that he stays in power, you know, 2 more years. Let's talk about that.
On this continent, when there are those leaders who would adapt bad practices out of purely self-interest, that one would hope that it would maybe go through a phase and then it would be over. There would be criticism, and those who are coming in would later on realize that no, this actually is not what we should be doing, and not perpetuate this kind of selfishness going forward. But it seems that we are just stuck in this rut whereby leaders still continue, and this is the latest example, to try to prolong their stay in power. Yet they are not people who have brought any significant difference to the lives of their people. It is all about themselves. And those who have done it, you can see in many instances, apart from changing the constitutions, they will go to the extent of rigging elections. They will detain, or they arrest and detain opposition leaders. They will ban opposition parties. They will rig elections, all in order for themselves, thinking, and I've used this expression before, that they are God's gift to their countries. And these are leaders who come from countries who have millions of citizens. And why should one person think that they are in any way special? Because they haven't proven that they are unique amongst previous leaders, that they have done a tremendous amount to reform and bring about significant change in the lives of their people. And they just continue. And I think there must have been we must be about up to 18 countries in Africa where these kind of constitutional changes have been made.
Okay. You know, supporters often argue that constitutional amendments are legal and democratic, you know, if they pass through parliament. This might be contrary to what the people want. So let's talk about that. I mean, they took the bill to parliament and it was passed.
If it's a rigged parliament, what do you expect? Those MPs sitting there were rigged into getting their seats. And other times there's also cash inducement to buy people. So you're not really you know, talking about a process which is fair and credible. So that way you'll find that in many cases, those who have done that are using a parliament that they brought in through the back door.
They're using like the majority rule.
No, it's not majority rule. I'm talking about, when I say bringing them through the back door, I meant that they have not complied with free and fair elections. They have not shown true democratic credentials in the way those MPs came into their parliament. So when you're in that situation that you want to entrench your position in a country, you'll go to any extent in order to do that. So like I've already mentioned, it's a typical example is the rigging of elections and the harassment and intimidation of opposition.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, in Zimbabwe, because now we are talking about Zimbabwe as a case study, you know, the political landscape has never been easy that side. So what can be done? I mean, there's SADC and there's AU, but clearly they always release statement. What can be done, you know, to stop all this?
You know, one shouldn't generalize, but I don't think you're going to find any resolution through SADC.
Why?
Because SADC also has other leaders who are in the same mold. I'm not saying all of them. Let me make that very clear. But there are a few other SADC leaders who are in the same mold, who have also, you know, done things. The recent example is Tanzania. And you know, Tanzania even went to the extent of killing their own people in order to stay in power. And when people resort to that, really, you know that it's an extreme. And people who do that really are sick, very sick, in that they would put themselves so much in front of everything else that they are prepared to take human lives in order to stay in power. So when you then think that someone is going to stand up and call them out from within the same region, and you talked about the continental body, there are others on the continent. Museveni in Uganda as an example. I mentioned Paul Biya, who's 93 years old.
And Paul Kagame as well.
Yeah, he's been there, 26 years. And he changed, Paul Kagame, he changed the constitution in order to stay longer. So I'm just saying, so you'll never find, it's like if I give an example, when you see there are military coups on the continent, very soon you'll find the regional body suspending the membership of that country because of the coup. The AU also will come out very quickly to suspend that country. But you would say, okay, but then what led to the coup? Those leaders themselves engaged in human rights violations, violated the rule of law, amended their constitutions, all the type of things which have crowned them as dictators, very autocratic leadership. And yet the regional bodies say nothing. The AU says nothing. And then when the soldiers say, no, because of all these things you've been doing, we are now taking over. And you'll find that initially, not long afterwards, you'll see that people rejoicing that that leader has been removed.
Yes.
But the unfortunate thing is that the military then, once they come into power, then they too start enjoying power and not wanting to hand over. But at the time it happened, there would be people support, majority people support, but yet they would be condemned by, like I said, these regional and continental bodies.
Yes.
So it's sort of like there's a club that these leaders belong to. There's solidarity. They're sort of thinking that, well, one day if I want to do the same thing, I will not expect my neighbor, my colleague, to be criticizing me.
Yes.
So let me just keep quiet.
All right. I mean, you as a former head of state, and you have a track record of, you know, calling these leaders out, like I mentioned before. You said these, you know, regional bodies and, you know, the AU, you know, they are of no help looking at what's on the ground. But what should be done? I mean, something has to be done because we're talking about human rights.
Regional bodies, continental bodies, international bodies don't step up. And let's look outside the continent. Let's look at a country like Israel, who are massacring innocent people in Gaza and in Lebanon as we speak, and in the West Bank. And there'll be a few noises made by some in the international community, but nobody really comes out and do what they're supposed to do and isolate that country. Israeli diplomats should be expelled from countries where they have embassies to show them that what you're doing is just not going to be tolerated. They should be totally isolated. The same with the Russians and their attack on Ukraine, and how you see human rights violations been there. Because you can't just walk into a country one day and decide you want to take it over. So yes, certain countries have stood up and opposed, but how loud are we raising our voices when you want to say governments which are democracies, which may try to give the impression that they are pro-human rights, but when we see human rights being violated on a massive scale, I gave the example of what Israel is doing to the Palestinians, and what Russia is doing to the Ukrainians, and yet those countries are not saying much about it. They don't say much about it, and that's why these things are allowed to perpetuate, and they continue and they continue, and right now we're in a situation in this world where no one is calling out these violations. So then it's left to others, NGOs, to voice their opinions as loud as they can.
You mentioned something about power, that even after the army takes over with the hope that they're going to make things better, but you like to use this word. I remember I once interviewed you about these dictators, and you said some people, they are drunk in power. Let's talk about that. As a former head of state, what happens when you become president? Why do people change and forget about what they said they will do?
I think when, as human beings, we all have weaknesses, and you can be easily tempted. You can be easily derailed. And that's when it then depends on the strength of your character as to whether you will resist those kind of temptations and say, no, this is the path I've set for myself. And that's why when I came in, and I'm not trying to say that I'm a good example, but I'm just saying that what I did right from the beginning was I put in place the 4 and then later the 5 Ds. And that to me was going to be my guide to make sure that every day when I woke up to say, am I still on this path of the 5 Ds? And all those 5 Ds were people-centered. So you'll find people at their inaugurations, when they become president or leader of anything, promising the earth that we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and then they lose direction. Yes, it's a challenge. I mean, we live in a global village, and there are a lot of geopolitical issues which can influence change, where you said, I intended to do this, but then I had to change. Like when I came in, it was before the world economic downturn. Suddenly you were confronted with this thing, and it was something that pulled every country down. So whatever plans I had at that time, had to be amended to then suit the new reality. But in other cases, you can make promises, and there won't be external factors that cause you to change. You just make promises which may be unrealistic in order just to come into power. And then you would find that Sir Keir Starmer find himself in that situation that now he's had to step down. But of course, one must say, and it wouldn't happen in this continent, that you take your hat off to him, that when others have said to him, look, you're not delivering, we don't think you're the right person to lead us anymore, he will unilaterally and voluntarily step down and say, okay, fine. And we've seen other people in that, even though it's very sad that a country like that has had so many leaders in such a short space of time, that also creates its own instability and problems. But at least, unlike those here who want to continue in office forever and not delivering anything, just want to continue on and on. And is there people who then suffer the consequences of poor governance?
Okay, let's talk about other players. Let's take a country like Botswana. We have a party that is ruling, and we have people who are backing that party. What's their role in advising the president? Now we're talking about Africa, advising the president that you are taking the wrong step. Let's go on this direction. Like you said, people, they promise, but they make a U-turn. What's their role in that?
I'm a bit reluctant to answer that question because I don't want to be dragged into politics.
Yes.
But in general terms, I would assume any president, I'm not talking about this one, I'm talking about past presidents and future presidents, they are surrounded by advisors. Your cabinet, for a start, people in the political arena. Then all your permanent secretaries and your officials, if you're meeting them on a regular basis, as you should be doing, presenting that here's this issue, here's a problem, here's a challenge, how do we get over it? Come back to me, go sit, work on it, come back to me, give me options, and let's then agree amongst ourselves which direction we're going to take. So that's how governments generally should work. When you probably then take the position that I'm not saying that's what's happening here, but I'll give an example of someone like Donald Trump. Obviously someone who just be taking decisions without listening to advice. And there's so many people out there, even within his own party, who don't like some of the decisions and things that he's doing. It just becomes a circus, which is what it is in that particular administration. And so I would just say that that's what advisors are. They may not be called advisors, but there are people there to give advice. You can bring in, if you want, other so-called advisors. We could be from inside or from outside the country, just to sort of top up those who are already in the country, coming with experience from outside as well.
Okay.
But as I say, that is something that each leader has to consider and take into account.
Okay, let's look at corruption as one of the factors that may lead to these leaders, extending their term. Let's talk about that.
Well, corruption is driven by greed. So if you find that, and when I talk about greed, I mean even people who are well off also engage in corruption, because that's greed. They just want more and more and more. So when they see what they can get, what being a leader can bring them, that when you've got people who are wanting to come to the country to invest, and you then meet with them and then you try to say, what can I get out of it if I give you this contract, if I give you this tender, and so on and so forth. If you try to amass wealth, it's the thing that I talked about resisting temptation, because who doesn't want to be well off? But the thing is, how do you get there? And do you get there by doing things which are unlawful and illegal and engage in corruption just for your own benefit? And corruption is another form of self-interest. When I talked about power, being people wanting to stay in power out of self-interest, greed is also something that drives self-interest.
There's something quite interesting. When you look at America, the leaders or people who become presidents there, they come in, coming from a background that, you'd say they are not hungry. Well, you'd say, greediness and all that. So looking at you joined politics, you are from a background, that you would say, it's well off. I would say that. Allow me to use that word. So now, what's the difference between people who become presidents from a well-off background and those that become president from, nothing. Does that drive them to be corrupt or to want to stay in power?
I think it applies to both. It's the issue I talked about of character. Because like currently now, you talked about America and the incumbent.
Yes.
Someone who's very well off. We've heard that. We know about that. And yet, things that he does using his office to further benefit himself and his family. That's what he does. It's greed, pure and simple greed. And as you know, someone like that who's a narcissist, who just is driven by himself and his own self-importance, that's what they do. Then yes, you'll probably have other people who don't have any kind of background in terms of riches, who when they get into office will then be tempted to try and get more. But then at the same time, you will hear of others who come from that kind of background, or poor background, who will say, from my experience, I know what it is like to be poor. And therefore, I will use this office to help poor people as much as possible and not myself. Because I know whilst I'm in this office, I'm looked after by the state. I don't need anything more. And when I leave office, I will continue to be looked after by the state in most cases. So like I say, those who just find that they succumb to greed, it doesn't matter. They will, if that's in your character, that's how you're going to be.
Okay. Now let's talk about solutions. In Asian countries, we see some of the prime ministers being held accountable. Some of them, they even go to jail. In Africa, it's rare to see presidents who are accused or alleged of, wrongdoing. Even if, there is evidence, it's hard to see them really being held accountable. Let's talk about accountability and its role in terms of curbing this, and now looking at Africa as a whole.
Really, the only thing that can hold people accountable, leaders, is the people themselves.
Through election.
So through, the issue of regional bodies, continental bodies, international bodies, we have seen it hasn't done anything. When I made those examples of both Israel, Russia, and even here on the continent, it hasn't changed anything. So it's the people themselves who can bring about change. So how do you get there? You talked about elections, but those kind of people will tend to rig elections. So you're not going to get rid of them that way. So it really needs people to think out of the box of how they can protest to make sure that, and when they protest, I'm not talking about violent protests. I'm not talking about that kind of uprisings. I'm not talking about anything that will see or give those people in power a reason to beat them up on the streets and lock them up. But at the end of the day, it comes to a point that you cannot resist as a leader people power. And that's what's needed, is people to stand up and say, right, we're in this, we're on our own. It's only us who can bring about change. So let's go ahead and do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, last question, looking at Africa. I'll use an example. Currently, illegal immigrants are being, sent back to their country. Let's talk about African unity, its power. How, when Africa unite, work together, trade together, ease these, immigration laws and the likes. How is that important in terms of making sure that Africa rise? Because we always say we have resources, in terms of minerals and this, but we are poor.
It just comes down to leadership and governance. Those countries which are so rich, you take a country like DRC, which has got so many resources, but it has been involved in endless civil wars for so many years. And, there have been different leaders who've come in from time to time, but nothing has changed. Nothing has changed.
All right. Okay, any last, word to African leaders and, just people?
No, I don't think there's anything I can say to African leaders because they wouldn't listen anyway, to what I said, to what I would have to say. But I would just, to the people, I would say to them, no, you need to take the future into your own hands. If you want to get out of the situation you find yourselves, you need to take the future into your own hands. But I'm not in any way suggesting unlawful activities or violent activities. That's not the way to do it. But they can certainly make their voices heard and the actions done in such a way that can bring about change. It may not happen overnight, but it can certainly come about.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we meet at a time when governments across the world are under increasing pressure to deliver more with few resources, to ensure value for money. Citizens rightfully expect efficient public services, modern infrastructure, quality health care, accessible education, and economic opportunities that improve livelihoods. The effectiveness of this, the effectiveness with which governments respond to these expectations depends significantly on the strength of their public procurement systems. Public procurement is therefore not merely an administrative function of government. It is one of the most strategic instruments available to the state for advancing national development, stimulating economic transformation, and delivering public value. Across many countries, procurement expenditure accounts for a significant portion of national budgets. The manner in which these resources are managed has a direct bearing on infrastructure development, industrialization, job creation, investment attraction, and the overall quality of public service. As we advance regional integration under the auspices of the Southern African Development Community and Africa Continental Free Trade Area, procurement systems must evolve beyond national boundaries. They must facilitate cross-border trade, support regional infrastructure development, encourage investment flows, and strengthen regional value chains. Our economies are increasingly interconnected, while our development challenges are increasingly shared. Consequently, our solutions must also become more increasingly collaborative. The establishment of Southern African Public Procurement Forum recognizes this fact that strong procurement systems do not belong to one nation. Rather, they constitute a shared regional asset and responsibility that requires cooperation, harmonization, and mutual accountability. Distinguished delegates, public procurement remains one of the most important pillars of governance. It determines how effectively public service reach out to people and how public resources are translated into roads, hospitals, schools, energy, infrastructure, water systems, and other services that improve the livelihoods of our citizens. While notable progress has been achieved across the region, several challenges continue to impede optimal performance. These include uneven institutional capacity, fragmented regulatory frameworks, limited professionalization, inadequate technological integration, and vulnerabilities that may create opportunities for inefficiency, waste, and unethical conduct. In this regard, our responsibility is to design practical, sustainable, and measurable solutions founded upon regional cooperation, peer learning, institutional strengthening, and the harmonization of best practices. This forum has been established as a platform through which member states can align policies, exchange experiences, and strengthen professional competence through training, research, and continuous learning. It should become a catalyst for institutional excellence and a center for promoting procurement standards that meet international best practice. Most importantly, it must become a catalyst for transforming procurement through transitional process into a strategic driver of sustainable development. As we embrace innovative and sustainable procurement practices, we must ensure that procurement systems actively support industrialization, economic resilience, local content development, and inclusive growth. Here, We need to walk the talk. Procurement decisions influence which industries grow, which enterprises thrive, and how economic opportunities are distributed across society. We must therefore leverage procurement as an instrument for supporting local production, empowering small and medium enterprises, promoting youth and women entrepreneurship, and advance broad-based economic participation. At the same time, procurement of the 21st century extends far beyond the acquisitions of goods, works, and services. It now encompasses climate resilience, environmental sustainability, digital transformation, gender responsiveness, technological innovation, and economic competitiveness. In launching this Southern Africa Public Procurement Forum, let us be clear about its strategic purpose. This forum must serve as a platform for regional benchmarking, peer learning, professional excellence, and mutual accountability. In this regard, member states should commit to 1. Harmonizing procurement laws to facilitate cross-border infrastructure development and trade. 2. Mutual recognition of professional certification to build a regional cadre for procurement professionals. 3. Developing shared electronic government procurement interoperability standards to combat cross-border procurement fraud.